You gonna go check on her? Go see what she's up to. I don't know what she's doing. Yeah, she's just gonna get in the cheese spot. Hi friends, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza. This gorgeous, sleek baby seal is Winnie, and she's just assumed her position. Hopefully this is not just, I think it is. I think it's just a giant glare in this general area, but I like seeing and I need my glasses for which to see with my eyeballs. Thank you, Winnie. That was a really loud settle down. A lot of huffing and puffing. There is a man walking by carrying his baby puppy in his arms. It is a beautiful day outside today. It is still February, but the air conditioning has literally been on all day today. Might I also inform you that it was like almost at freezing a couple of days ago. And then a couple of days before that, it hit 80 degrees. We are in the throes of the before springtime where I live because we have several false springs before spring actually shows up, and it freaks all the flowers out. Every single year, the daffodils start coming up, which, let's be honest, if there wasn't an IQ test for flowers, daffodils would. Holy. This man is carrying a doodle and a baby Bjorn. What is happening? What is my life? Why are all these people carrying their puppies like babies? Am I supposed to do that? I want to. I forget what I was even talking about, the weather, but we are in the throes of it. So on this day, this national holiday that is Super Bowl Sunday, go sports ball or whatever. I am not a huge football fan, even though everyone in my family is. Don't worry. People that share the same last name as me are currently cheering teams on. But since it's a beautiful day, we don't really have anything to do. I will not be partaking in Super Bowl-ness. I decided that I am going to do like a little mini 24-hour reading situation because I've really been feeling like reading. I'm not going to say the slump is gone because I feel like that will jinx myself, but I'm feeling good about reading. We are going to do the timer method, which is you set a timer for 24 hours. You start the timer when you start reading. You stop the timer when you stop reading because I like sleeping and I have too much energy just coursing through my body at all times to sit still for that long. I will not be able to focus if you make me sit for like an entire 24-hour stretch. I'm going to see how much I can read within a 24-hour period, being an actual timed out 24 hours instead of in just one day that is 24 hours. I have a little time to make this work so I don't have to try and cram 24 hours in like a day and a half. I can give myself a little more leeway with that. But let's pick up some books. Let's enjoy reading, Right now, I think I'm going to pick an audiobook because there are some things I would like to get done around the house, and audiobooks are reading, and I will not be taking any criticism on that. I currently have this audiobook. What is this called? I have the audiobook Immortal by Lynn Tan. I have not read anything from this author before, but I believe this is like a new adult fantasy romance. A young ruler must forge a delicate alliance with the enigmatic. I hope I'm saying that right. Sometimes there's just words that you never say out loud. You just say them in your head and then you try and say them out loud and your tongue's like, no, absolutely not. Enigmatic god of war to protect her kingdom in this stunning romantic fantasy filled with dangerous secrets, forbidden magic, and passion. So we have some sort of fantasy romancy situation happening with the god of war, and our female main character, I believe, is a human. A mortal, not an immortal. It has an absolutely gorgeous cover, and I'd wanted to read it, and that's really all the excuses I need. Physically, I have a bunch of stuff downloaded on my Kindle. I really want to pick up Grave Matters. I think this is like a horror romance, like a dark romance with some sort of fungus mushroom horror element. And creepy mushrooms, creepy spores, creepy plant life. It works for me in horror, but I want to try this as a dark romance. Romances are usually pretty fast. I can usually kind of fly through them quickly. They're good little palate cleansers. I have not had too much luck with this author. I tried to read their vampire series, which was like Orange something. I don't know why I think it's orange something, but I will put it up here. You see? I tried to read that one. Did not like it at all. And I feel like everyone else was just like absolutely obsessed with it. It was not for me. And that's okay. Sometimes some things are just not for some people. I'm glad that some people enjoyed it and loved it, and I'm so happy for them. I love when people love things. I'm a fan of fans. I think I've picked up a few other little things from this author and had an okay good time. I'm going to give this a try just to see if it's up my alley, up my street, something I might be into. Just because I think the element of the dark romance, but the element of the mushroom horror, fungus horror, because I know that usually works for me. This would be, if this author is going to write something that works for me, this is probably it. I'm sorry, there are so many dogs walking by because the weather is nice and nobody wants to be inside. And my attention is like, dog, dog, you are also dog. Yes, you are a good dog. I am also thinking I might pick up a physical book, but I haven't decided what yet. I might just stick with my Kindle and my audiobook right now, and I will check back in with you when I've gotten a little way into this. Let's start the timer and get this show on the road. See how much I can read in 24 hours. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break. One, because the sun is shining, the birds are chirping. We need to touch some grass outside. Also, the dogs wanted to come outside, so I thought I'd venture out here with them. There's some sort of drag race happening. No, that's really exciting. We have this thing that happens here. I bet this happens all over the country, but we have this thing that happens here where these people that all ride like motorcycles and four-wheelers and like souped up cars, they all kind of like gather together and drive around the city and, you know, pop wheelies and make really loud noises. And the cops can't do anything about it because it's almost too dangerous to intervene. They just kind of swarm and take over traffic and drive around town. It's incredibly loud when it happens, and it sounds like it's happening, but I think it's far enough away that it shouldn't bother us. That was a complete side tangent. We have gotten to about the 20% mark in Grave Matters, and I realized that I told you absolutely nothing about this when we started. So this is the story of Sydney, and she is a 26-year-old academic. She recently went to Stanford and has been accepted into some prestigious internship at this research facility on this like remote island in the Pacific Northwest. She is going there to study mushrooms and fungus. She's done some sort of project. I don't know. I'm not in academia, but some sort of project where she has gotten a lot of attention. She discovered some sort of like a dark fungus. This place that she is going to has some sort of pharmaceutical thing tied to it, but there seems to be some sort of specific fungus that has been discovered in this place. This company that owns this research facility has what would the word be? It has kind of cornered the market on this one specific mushroom that only exists in this one place. She comes here, gets off the plane, and almost immediately things are weird. People are acting suspicious. Basically, everyone is acting suspicious, aside from a few of the other students that are here. Everybody's just acting weird, off, like they're keeping secrets, like they know something. Immediately, Sydney seems to be seeing things that aren't there, or is she? She's hearing things that aren't there, but is she? Then she immediately starts having really spicy dreams about one of her professors. We also know that something happened at Stanford and that Sydney will not be returning, but she does not want the program that she is in to find out about this. We don't know what happened. I'm sure it will be drizzled out to us slowly so we can find out what Sydney did or what happened that has gotten her expelled from the college that she was attending. This is just fine. I think it's almost like slightly jarring because you go from creepy, sinister, very misty atmosphere, lots of big green trees. Honestly, I'm imagining the atmosphere of Twilight. Everything's kind of like gray, but also green, lots of ferns, very lush, but also damp, covered in fungus. Everyone's acting suspiciously, but then Sydney will like have these intense, spicy dreams that are almost like taking me out of it. I think we're supposed to also add to the fact that we are worried about her mental state at this moment and the mental state of a lot of people on the island at the time. I think that I might move on to something else. Not that I'm giving up on this completely, but I find myself wanting to put this down. So let's pick up something that we want to keep reading. I actually think that I am going to pick up Immortal because there's some things that I want to do around the house. So we will start our timer back up and audiobook it for a while, move around, keep it going. Well, it's a new day, and on theme with it being not spring but not spring, just the false spring that happens every single year. It is now cold enough that the heat kicked on this morning, and it is cold, gray, just overcast today. So it's a great day for reading. And we're going to be doing some of that. I read for about 4 hours yesterday, which isn't amazing, but I did get a lot of stuff done. And I did do some doom scrolling, which is another reason that I feel like I need to do this while I'm in the mood for reading. The doom scrolling gives me the anxiety, and we were trying to avoid the anxiety. So we were trying to pick up a book instead of sitting on our phone and just scrolling through the unending fire and damnation that is the year 2025 so far. I am going to be picking up my audiobook today, but I thought I'd check in with you. How far did I get into it? I am at the 40% mark of Immortal. This is the story of a princess. Like, her grandfather is the king of this land, but in an Immortal is the queen of, I think she's called like the queen of the Goldlands. She basically is in charge of them. So they have a magical wall that separates them from whatever world is on the other side. This queen of the Goldlands rules over them. They have pledged fealty to this immortal god type creature. She is mad because she sent the king of this country, our main character's grandfather, to acquire something for her. And instead of giving it to her like he was supposed to, he gives it to his granddaughter. It sounds like there's a lot of political treachery going on at home. There's a lot of political treachery going on with the Immortals. And then there are these like third creatures, which are just kind of referred to as the monsters, that I believe live on the other side of the wall. And they were all at war at one point with these monsters. And that is how our main character's kingdom ended up under the control of this immortal, because they became allies with her during this war with the monsters. All of that sounds very convoluted. I hope that made sense. In the opening of this story, the golden goddess queen lady, Immortal, has come to our kingdom, and she is pissed off and is setting fire to and so our grandfather and our granddaughter are running to escape the wrath of the woman in charge. Grandfather gives something to our main character, and then she like escapes and then almost immediately comes back. Like, it's just, this book is giving me, I know this is supposed to be like new adult bordering on YA fantasy that has a romance happening, but we are really focusing on that romance. We are introduced to a lot of characters, but we are told their relationships to each other instead of shown their relationships to each other. I understand we're trying to get through a lot. There's a lot happening in the beginning of this with our escape and then subsequent turn around and come right back. There's a couple fight scenes. There's a fire. The Immortals get introduced. But everything is hard to follow in that I understand there are Immortals, but at this point in the story, I should have gotten more about how they work, how their political hierarchy exists, who is what, who does what. We get one scene where our main character opens a book and is like, oh, well, all Immortals can heal people, ride on clouds, and I forget the third thing, but all Immortals can do 3 things. And then each Immortal can have its own special powers as well. Our main character has been given this like magical item that the Immortals are after. She's trying to keep this a secret. We know little to nothing about this magical item. We know little to nothing about the Immortals, but our main character ends up almost immediately having to go stay at the God of War's house. And then we get some tension, and then things happen, and then the God of War has to come stay at our house. So this is going to be a 3 if I'm nice. This is a lot of showing instead of telling. Things just seem to be happening without any real connection. I'm not feeling connected to any of the characters. I don't really care about any of the romance. There is a character that is introduced in the beginning, and I'm assuming that he is going to be something that adds tension to our romance. It's feeling very YA, which is not always a bad thing. Sometimes you want to read a YA, but it's almost YA in the predictable sense. I am hoping that some of these things get turned on their head, that I'm not predicting correctly. But so far, I'm just kind of listening without any real connection to anything. It's not a bad book. Things are being explained. I don't want to say things aren't being, no, they're not. There's a lot of stuff that isn't being explained. And I think that is probably, I think this might be based on some sort of fable or story that already exists. When you don't know the backstory of that, when you don't have that structure, that backbone of understanding the fable that is the original story, it does feel a little lacking when you're just consuming this story without prior knowledge of what the inspiration is. But I'm going to keep reading. I'm already at 40%. Well, I guess I'll keep listening. I'm going to take Cheese on a WALK because she is full of energy and Sweet Winnie loves her alone time. And we're going to get some reading done today. Let's see how much reading we can get done today on this beautifully gloomy day. It's a great day for reading. The heat literally just turned on, like as I started recording. The heat will now be the white noise in the background of this clip. Spring. It is my least favorite season here. For the reason, number one, what's currently happening, the false spring that happens before spring, the cold and hot, then cold and hot. No one knows how to dress. I don't know how to dress. 2, as soon as actual spring shows up, everything will be covered in a layer of green pollen. The pollen where I live is so intense that literally the dogs, if she spends too much time outside, she will have a slightly green tinge to her. It's intense. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the fact that I finished a book. I mean, this has got some nature horror elements, so I'm not completely off topic. I decided to continue on with my reading, and I finished Grave Matter. The second half of this book was much stronger than the first. I also should just say that the author obviously did a lot of research into mushrooms. In the acknowledgement, they talk about who they went to with their questions about mushrooms, who did the brainstorming with the mushrooms for them. I'm pretty sure they watched The Last of Us and probably played the video game. Not gonna lie, they are a fan of the type of horror that I am also a fan of, but they went down a rabbit hole because sometimes there were points in this book where I'm sure the science isn't actually sciencing, but it sounds like it is. There's a lot of it. I stand by what I said in the beginning that the spicy scenes were kind of jarring. A lot of them are dream sequences, so they do kind of come out of nowhere and then abruptly stop. I think it starts to work better in the second half of the book only because we have gotten to the point where everything is like mentally disintegrating. You can't trust anyone. Everything is off. Creepy things are happening. The hallucinations, if that's what they are getting stronger. I think the beginning of the book, we don't want to just throw it all at you. We have to work up to it. Just the disjointed nature of everything that's happening. The horror elements in this. The really drippy, goopy things that happen. There aren't an insane amount of them, but when they show up, it reminds me of the movie Annihilation. I'll put, I have one specific picture in my brain. Not that this actually happens, but there's some imagery several times over that reminds me of different points of the movie Annihilation, not the book Annihilation. Very different. Although creepy spores, creepy mushrooms keep creepy plant life. Anyways, the twist in this book was a good one. I enjoyed it. I did not guess it, but once it happens, the seeds have been planted. The author did the work of foreshadowing it without giving it away. It worked. I enjoyed myself. 3 stars. Horror, dark, romancy stuff. And one of, I would say, probably the most successful thing for me that I've read from this author. But now we are at a point where we have to pick up something new. We are I think I'm at just past the 13-hour mark. So we've read somewhere around 10 hours. I feel like the next thing I want to pick up, I want it to be a little bit more of lighter fare. I want something that is a little bit easily digestible, maybe a little bit funny. A few chuckles. I need a few chuckles in my life after reading sexy mushroom horror. I'm gonna go through my Kindle, see what I'm feeling. I have a bunch of books that are supposed to arrive somewhat soon, but they're not here yet, and I'm ready to pick up something new. So I'll check back in with you when I've made it a little bit of a way into some book, When he, now every time I clap to start a clip, when he looks at me does that mean it's time for pets? The only reason she's not coming over here is because Cheese, who is right there, has one of Winnie's favorite toys and is just squeaking it. Don't you want it? Don't you want this? This is how my dogs play with each other. They torment each other. We are here to do a super quick clip. If you hear the dogs playing with each other, that's just my life. That's just what it sounds like in my house. I've got to go to work here in a minute, but I did get some reading done last night and I wanted to update you. I decided to follow my mood, pick up something that was going to be a funny type fantasy, and I went with, what is the name of it? I'll pop it up on the screen. It is the next book in the City Watch series from Discworld. Is it Men at Arms? I think it might be Men at Arms. But this is the next book. I have read Guards in this series. Discworld has something ridiculous, 40 plus books, but there are series within the series. So you don't necessarily actually read them in publication order. You can do that if you want to, but that's not how people tell you to read this series. You are most likely going to enjoy yourself more. Every time Cheese jumps, she blocks the light. She's going up and down off the sofa, just stealing toys from Winnie. There are reading lists within this, and so you kind of pick a storyline. There is the witches storyline, there is the death storyline, and there is the City Watch storyline. I'm currently reading in the City Watch storyline. I believe this is the book that has been recently picked up by Penguin Classics. Hey friends, editing Mrs. Pizza here to let you know that it is the 6th book in the City Watch series, which is called The Night Watch, that has been picked up by Penguin Classics and will be printed in their traditional black covers. We are only on book 2. So we have quite a few of storylines and books to get through before the one that has been picked up by Penguin Classics. But honestly, they should pick up the whole entire series within the series because it's fantastic. Which is great, but you need to read Guards before you read Men at Arms. Guards is the story of Carrot. He is a young man who was raised by dwarves, but one day his father, who is a dwarf, pulls him aside and he's like, hey buddy, I don't know how you don't know this, but you are not a dwarf. Everyone else here is barely hitting 5 feet and you are definitely topping out at 6'4". You, as a human, need to go spend some time with some humans, so he sends his son off to the big city. Carrot joins the City Watch. He actually joins the Night Division, so he's in the Night Watch, which is kind of this police type thing that used to do a lot of good in the city, but now is just relegated to ringing a bell and telling people what time it is. This city itself is absolutely chaotic. There's a guild for everything. There's clown guilds, assassin guilds, just alchemist guilds, wizard guilds. There's so many just nonsensical funny things happening. In that first book, Carrot joins the City Watch. There are 3 other members, including the captain of the City Watch, whose name is Vines, and they go on an adventure within the city. Carrot is funny because dwarves don't understand, how do I even put this? They don't understand, everything is straightforward for them. They don't get puns, they don't get sarcasm, they don't understand metaphors. Everything is straightforward for a dwarf. This is how Carrot has been raised. So there's a lot of moments of humor when someone says something like, there's evil afoot, and Carrot would be like, what are you talking about, evil feet? And like stare at his feet. That's a terrible example, but I cannot come up with better right now because it's really early. So in this next book, we have had the events of the first book happen. Carrot is still a member of the City Watch, but he's now lived in the city for, I think it's like half a year, months, not a full year, but lots of months. And we now have 3 new members of the City Watch, one being a woman, one being a troll, and one being a dwarf. And this is a big deal because the City Watch has only ever been men. And now we not only have women, but we have other species of person that have joined the City Watch. When once again, something starts happening behind the scenes, and Carrot and Vimes and the rest of the people in the City Watch start investigating. They find clues. You get the POV of the person that is doing the dastardly deeds and a little bit of backstory on them, but you don't get their plan. So it is fun to follow our Carrot, our Vimes, our City Watch characters as they try and figure out with the clues you're given what's actually going on in the city. This book is hilarious. I am literally just highlighting the crap out of stuff on my Kindle. There are also a lot of footnotes to this, which I really enjoy in my Kindle because you tap and the footnotes just pop up, and sometimes they give me a good chuckle as well. I read last night and I think I'm at like the 49% mark. I'm just flying through this book and really enjoying it. And I take it to work with me, and if I've got a couple of minutes, I'm going to pick it up where I can. I'm definitely going to try and remember to start my timer when I get a few chances to read at work. But so far, this was a good choice. I'm glad I picked it up. I timed this poorly. The washing machine is making a whole heck of a lot of noise. But we need to check in because I have only got about 5 hours left, which I'm going to make happen this glorious, glorious day that we are currently living. I am in the middle of 2 books now, but it's not the 2 books that you would think. Well, one of them is. If you've been paying attention. We should start this off by saying I decided to soft DNF Immortal. I just wasn't having a good time. I don't think this is a bad book. I just don't think I was in the proper... I don't think my washing machine should be making that noise. I was just not feeling it. It was feeling very cringy to me, and I think that I'm just not in the current mood for something that feels as YA and formulaic as that does. Not to say it's bad. It is not bad. There is a lot of timing that is important. Cool. Now it's rinsing again. There's a lot of timing that's super important when it comes to reading. I know there have been several books that I have truly enjoyed, but the first time I picked them up, I was not having a good time. I set them down until I knew the timing was right, picked them back up, had a hell of a good time with them. So we don't force ourselves to read things when we're not feeling it. So I'm putting down Immortal. That meant that I needed another audiobook. And so I decided to pick up Scythe and Sparrow. I pre-ordered this because I've been loving the Ruinous, I think it's the Ruinous Love. Yes, the Ruinous Love trilogy. The first book being Butcher and Blackbird, the second one being Leather and Lark, and we now have the completion of our trio of brothers and their romances, and this is Scythe and Sparrow. This is Fionn and Rose's story. All of these books are taking place within the same time period. They're running simultaneous side by side to each other, but we're following different couples who are in different places. You know a few things about this couple going into it, but you don't know how they met, how they got together, things and stuff and whatnot. I was very excited about this, and my library sent me a little notification after this book arrived and was like, hey girl, we got that on audiobook if you're interested. So I picked up the audiobook to this. I am 65% of the way into this, and I'm having an okay time. I doubt this is going to be my favorite in the series. I think Butcher and Blackbird is going to hold that spot, but I am enjoying this. We have Fionn, and he is a doctor. He lives in a small town in Nebraska. He had a really rough upbringing. We have learned this from his brother's stories, and is that completely necessary? We are now getting Fionn in. He has run away from the Boston area for reasons that he gets into in this book, but he has moved out to the middle of nowhere land, and he is a doctor. A surgeon, I believe, but he works in a small clinic sometimes, works in a hospital sometimes. He has this darker edge to his personality that he keeps in check because it makes him nervous to let those darker urges out. We also have Rose. She not only does tarot card readings, but she also does like the cage of death or whatever they call it. She rides a motorcycle around in a great big cage with some other people. She does a motorcycle stunt show as well. In the opening of this story, we get Rose reading a woman's fortune, and she can tell through context clues and just the way the woman is acting that this woman's husband is most likely abusing her. And so Rose has some sort of history with this that we get sprinkled throughout the book as well, but she feels that she must take an active role in helping this stranger with the horrible situation that she's in. Rose takes it upon herself to do something, which honestly is kind of stupid, but she ends up injured along the way, and that's how she meets Fionn. He gets an alert that the clinic that he works at has some sort of break-in situation. He thinks it's some local wildlife that he's been dealing with. But when he gets there, he finds Rose, and she's in bad shape. These two end up living together because Rose needs a place to stay. The tension builds, the romance, what have you. I am about a little more than halfway through, and I'm having an okay good time. I really like this trilogy, so it's not that much of a surprise that I'm enjoying this. The audiobooks for this series are just perfection. Just perfection. I really think they up your star rating, enjoyment-wise. I am also still reading Men-at-Arms and really enjoying it, and if I sat down and put my brain to it, I could probably finish it tonight. But what I actually want to do right now is make some brownies because I can. So we're going to make some brownies, and we're going to listen to some dark romance rom-com while we're making ourselves a nice little sweet treat. Hello from the nest that is my sofa right now. Winnie likes when we have a nest going. Winnie usually likes most things, so it's not surprising. Pardon. Okay. I ended up wrapping up Scythe and Sparrow pretty quickly, but no surprise, I tend to move really quickly through romances in general. This ended up being a decently good time. I ended up giving it a 3.5 stars. Like I thought kind of initially, this was not my new favorite in the series, but it was a nice conclusion. I will say, of this entire book, the third act conflict and resolution was my favorite part. So the last little portion of this book is the best part in the entire book. in my opinion. I liked both characters, but I just felt like in the 2 previous installments, both Butcher and Blackbird and Leather and Lark, there is a serial killer, contract killer, multiple people being Dexter type characters in each storyline. In this storyline, although there are elements of that, they are not really successful. I almost feel like it would have been better if it's Rose. Rose just kind of keeps bumbling her way into these murder type scenarios without much forethought, and it just felt reckless in a not fun way. Like, it felt stupid. And I get that she's supposed to be this chaotic type character, and it just wasn't my favorite. But I did enjoy the 3rd act conflict and resolution between those characters, where they end up. The epilogue that is included didn't necessarily actually feel like an epilogue. I mean, it did, because it does come from a different character's point of view than the ones that we've been previously getting in this story, but it is taking place immediately after we finish up with the points of view of the characters we've been following all along. It's not a big time jump, which is fine. It was a nice wrap up to this trilogy that I've enjoyed. I'm glad I read this, and I will keep reading stuff from this author because she's got a pretty good sense of humor. I saw a lot of people saying this was their favorite couple of the entire series, and even though I didn't have those same thoughts, I really did enjoy this book. But we currently have 3 hours and 15 minutes left on our timer to read our face-off. And I think I don't know if I can actually finish Men-at-Arms because I have been picking it up as well in between. I didn't just read this solidly. I was going back and forth between the 2. So maybe I can finish it in 3 hours. I'm ending this vlog at the 24-hour mark, so maybe we can squeeze one more book in, and then we'll see how many pages we made it through in 24 hours. When he's ready for some reading snuggles. Oh, hi. You never come over and say hello. Well, I don't know how we got so lucky, but a bunch of dogs just walked by and nobody seemed to feel the need to bark. All right, with about 20 seconds to spare, I finished Men-at-Arms. And no surprise here, I absolutely love this. It was the kind of story, like all of the Discworld stories I've read so far, that loves to teach you life lessons in the silliest of ways, to turn stereotypes on their head, use a good pun, just get you laughing during this story while you're taking all of these twists and turns. Discworld is a silly place, and this city that everyone lives in is extra silly on top of it. I loved Carrot. I loved all of our new guards. In this story, our character Vimes is having a crisis of identity as he looks towards the end of his career in the City Watch. We are going through that with him. We have some revelations about Carrot that came at the very end of the last book. They were just a little sprinkle, a little hint, and we're now dealing with those at the forefront type way. But overall, this is a story about everybody coming together, about figuring out how to get people to get along, how that one person, one bad apple in charge of a group can really set them down the wrong path. They keep referring to Carrot as simple but not dumb, and I really love that he is this very simple, good person, but he's not stupid. He's just simplistically minded. He just is a good person. The Discworld series as a whole is just so flipping heartwarming and lovely. And I have got another book down in the insane number of books that are in the series, but I think I'm going to be really sad once I start running out of books to read. I need to do math and figure out how many books, how many pages I've read, and I'm frantically looking around for my phone. I didn't want to step on you, so I fell down instead. We read a little over the 50% mark in Immortal. I think we were somewhere between like 52, 54%. So of the 464 pages in that, we're going to give ourselves about 250. We read Grave Matter, which is 400 pages, Scythe and Sparrow, which is 416, and finished up with Men at Arms at around 377. So let's do some math. In 24 hours, I read 1,443 pages, which ain't too shabby. Which also helped me because in case you haven't been on Planet Earth recently, or specifically the country that I currently reside in, everything has kind of been on fire, and so trying to avoid doom scrolling and instead picking up things to read has really helped. 1,400 pages of not feeling the anxiety. I really enjoyed myself doing this vlog. It was fun to kind of see how many hours too I could squeeze into little pockets throughout the day, and I feel like I got through some good books. But if you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe. I hope you're reading good books out there, wherever you are, and I'd love to hear about them. And we'll see you next time. Right, Winnie girl?